Our faith is the most incredible, unimaginable thing in this world. It is the greatest reality of our entire life. I know that many of you would agree with me, even though I can't see that you are. I'm sure you are, nodding in your hearts. But I often wonder if I truly realise how fantastic it is at times. Compared to other things in life, it is so positive and affirming and life-giving that we should seriously wonder why other people don't jump on board. Why don't other people jump on board with this faith? Because this faith is awesome. Our Christian faith speaks about a God personally and intentionally reaching out to us, wanting to have a real relationship with us. Throughout our readings and our hymns this morning, we read of the Good Shepherd who cares deeply for the sheep. And although it truly can be difficult to believe in this God at times, there are ways and there are consequences and there are proofs given to us that clearly help us realise the benefits and therefore the reality of God in our life. Our faith specifically shows us the way to knowing the reality of God in our life. That makes our life better. We don't have to second guess it. We don't have to be superstitious. We don't even have to worry. Of course, the biggest problem we do seem to have is following this pathway towards God. Because even though it leads us to this incredible, unimaginable God, it tends to go against our nature. Our nature, which we inherited a long time ago through Adam and Eve, rejected a relationship with God. Now, the good old-fashioned word that came to mind when I thought of this was forsook. And because I don't use the word forsook very often, I thought this was a great opportunity to use the word forsook. And now I've used it 3 times, plus at the earlier service. I can't stop thinking of that word now, so can you? It means now that even though we could know the power of God, there are also forces at work that keep us from achieving this relationship. We want to do what we want to do, even though what we want to do isn't as good as what God wants us to do. So we're crazy. Even as believers, people who profess this faith don't even do that. Even Paul talked about it in Romans 7. The things I want to do, I don't do. And the things I don't want to do, I keep doing. What a wretched man I am. That almost sounds like Dr. Seuss at the end. It's crazy because we do things like this. We don't forgive people who hurt us sometimes. We often like to talk behind the backs of others, especially if it's interesting or titillating. We far more enjoy buying new things for ourselves rather than giving money away. We prefer, in some cases, to even build a nest egg for us here on earth rather than treasures in heaven. I can say that because I don't have much of a nest egg, so it's easy for me to say that. God has shown us through the Bible how we can have a relationship with God through the way that we live, our words, and especially our actions in response to God's initiative in our life. But often we do this half-heartedly. I know that often I do. And yet we still expect to know the reality of God in our life. But we can't, because it doesn't work like that. It never has. We see that all throughout the Bible. Even Jesus said to live for Christ and to die to self. They're not my words, they're Jesus's. But perhaps we focus too much on the dying to self part. We go, I don't really want to do that. It's a bit too hard, because there's bits and pieces that I like to hold on to and not let them go. And we don't actually focus on the living for Christ part. But is there any better way for us to spend our short, brief life than to live for Christ? But then again, we need to ask ourselves, what does it mean to live for Christ? Is it to come to the cathedral every Sunday, whether you want to or not? I'll leave you that to think about yourselves. I think the one problem is that we can't ever truly know who God is. And that can be a problem. Because God is beyond our ability to know. Even if we think we like to know everything there is to know, we don't know, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to say that sentence again. The best we can do in relation to the reality of God is through the choices that we make in our life, following the path that God has shown us. And we see the reality of God through that. It's why the Old Testament talks so much about the law, the importance of the law. Not because it showed us God per se, but rather it showed the reality of God through the way that we live. And so we see the reality of God through things we do, like forgiveness, generosity, hospitality, and indeed worship. It is seen in the goodness that we experience. And so our faith is amazing. The incredible picture we read about in Revelation 7 this morning. A multitude of nations standing before the throne singing affirmations to the Lamb and to God. I mean, we as clergy get quite excited if we get up to 250 here at the 10 o'clock service. 300 would be beside ourselves. If we had to do another service, then that's pushing it a bit too far, wouldn't it? But here we have a multitude of nations standing before the throne, countless beings in utter praise and adoration. This is our faith. And we today, although we only scratch the surface, we still get a taste of this incredible reality of worshipping this incredible God. And we need to remind ourselves, this isn't science fiction. It isn't something that someone made up. It is in fact the statement of our faith that has been passed through generation after generation. We are connecting with a God in a real and life-affirming way. It's good. We should be happy about that sort of stuff. And so our faith is so incredible and unimaginable because we connect with a God who created everything there is. And we can still know something life-changing about God, even though God is beyond our comprehension. Our faith in God is reminded to us each day to the extent to which God reached out to us in the words that we say that this is my body given for you. This is my blood shed for you. And we extol these incredible realities beyond our comprehension in the great Thanksgiving with words like, the Lord is here. Not there, not somewhere, not out there in outer space. The Lord is here. And we respond by saying, God's Spirit is with us. With us. I think of the picture of a flame. Flame is sometimes associated with the Spirit. And you've got two candles, one with a flame, one without. I should have hit them. Not that we haven't got a lack of candles, but never mind. And use your imagination. And when the lit candle goes to the other candle, it is the flame. It's still a flame. It's not a little bit of a flame. God's Spirit is with us completely. Incredible. Even if sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Because often it doesn't feel like the Lord is with us. But we can still rejoice and we can hold on, as the Psalm 23 said this morning, even when we walk through the darkest valley, you're with me. We can rejoice and hold on to this declaration because this is our reality, regardless of any feelings or doubts. Our service is filled with incredible affirmations, things like forgiveness. When we share the peace. When we say things like, hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Hear what the Spirit is saying to us because we are the church. This is God's Spirit speaking to us. And all these things, they add value to our life. These words are not irrelevant. They aren't boring. And they definitely are not valueless. And even though we can go through the motions of a service, and sometimes it can have very little impact on us because we're quite keen to see what we're going to be doing afterwards, perhaps. These words actually mean something incredible. And they can, if we choose, they can utterly change our life for the better. I talked about sharing our faith and wondering why people don't jump on board. And the difficulty we have with this, and sometimes that is with our closest family members who have turned their back on this faith. But with our faith, we don't actually need to defend it. We don't have to corral people into believing like a stubborn sheep. And as I said this morning, it's like the dog show. You remember the dog show with the sheep and the time's counting down and that last sheep isn't getting into the gate and you're going, get in there, that stupid sheep. And it's almost like that. It's trying to get people into this thing. Or we try to sell our faith like a door-to-door salesman. so they believe like we believe. We don't need to do that. The power of our faith actually attracts people naturally. Jesus never had to go door to door. People were attracted to him. Throughout our church history, we see people being attracted to this faith for one thing and one thing only, because it gave life and people wanted this life. The power of this faith is through the way that we choose to live. And that is the way Jesus told us to live. And this is ultimately seen in the words we say every Sunday, to love others as we love ourselves. Now, I know for a fact, even visitors here, that you all love me unconditionally because I'm so lovable. Everyone smiling? Can't see any daggers there too much. But loving me, that's easy, of course. But what about loving each other? Jesus said that they will know that they are my disciples for their love for one another, not their condemnation, not their criticalness, not their judgment, but their love. So in conclusion, the most important thing for us to know more and more is the incredible reality of our faith. The daily life-changing opportunities this faith avails us. We're not talking about our whole life, but just today. What does this faith give us for today in the way that we talk and treat others? The quest is not simply to make ourselves better or to keep ourselves safe so that we think we're on our names in the book of life and we can get it ticked off. That's not what our faith is about. Our faith is about making this world a better place. Safer, more loving, being kinder, perhaps even cleaner with the environment. When we read again the reality of our faith in the Bible, we see the profound love that God has for all people and creation. The benefits it brings to our life this day. It is amazing that not more people want to jump on board. And perhaps the most important question we should ask ourselves is not the big debate we have at the moment about sexuality, but perhaps why don't people jump on board with our faith? We are a truly blessed people, and we have so much to be thankful for. We have an incredible God who we worship, and it is very good. Amen.